welcome to the podcast, Tony Southwell. Tony, we have been chatting for, endlessly since last year, since I started this podcast. Dude, you have been on a podcast before a podcast just to get to this podcast.
Yeah, I know. We've run through a fair bit of stuff.
Yeah. So you were, where were you living before you moved to Queensland?
I've lived my whole life on a family property in Bowning, New South Wales, which is just on the Hume Highway, Melbourne side of Yass.
Yep.
So we lived there for 50 years, and then we sold that recently and moved up to the Fraser Coast.
Yeah, and you obviously have also grown up in Newcastle. Is that where you grew up?
No, I was born there.
Born there.
Yeah. I'm a bought baby, so
Yep.
I don't have a belly button.
Yep.
My parents bought me from a church in Newcastle.
Yep.
And brought me back to Yass when I was 10 days old.
Yeah, right. So you were adopted.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Can you explain life growing up a bit, like in your early days, which you are going to explain in your book?
No real difference. My paternal grandparents were really wonderful, and there was like 27, I think, or 6 grandkids, and I was the only adopted one. Never felt any different, never got treated any differently. So, yeah, it was no different to me. I knew from the start that I was adopted, so it wasn't like a revelation. The revelation came years later when I found out that I had a sister and a full sister and a half-brother and a half-sister. Mm. So that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
No, it was no different.
When did you meet them? In your teens, was it?
No, not till I moved to Melbourne. Me and my wife and kids moved to Melbourne in 2012. I bought a towing business down there.
Yep.
And what happened was I put a post. I tried in the early 90s to see if I had any siblings, just because I was getting to that age where health was, I was going to worry about health.
Yep.
So I tried to find out, but there was a veto on my adoption papers, which meant I couldn't contact anyone, like my birth parents or anyone from my birth family. So it just sort of hit a brick wall. Then when we were in Melbourne, I decided because I'd heard I had a sister when I did the research, but I wasn't allowed to contact her. A few years later when we were living in Melbourne, I thought, oh, fuck it, I'm going to try and find out, who my birth family was. Yep. So I made a sign and I stood there and just said, looking for this woman. Apparently she's my sister, and this was her last known address in Sydney, if anyone can help me. The power of Facebook, when you put something like that up, it got shared 37,000 times.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Throughout Facebook.
Yeah.
In a matter of 6 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
Obviously, the adoption thing hit a chord with people and they just went nuts. Next minute, I get a phone call from, because I put my phone number on it, from this woman, and she says, is this Tony Southwell? And I said, yeah, who's this? She goes, her name's Michelle as well. She said, this is Michelle. And I said, hi. She said, what's this story?
Yeah.
Because I don't have any, because she was adopted out by the same people.
Yeah, okay.
What had happened was a friend of her who's a police officer saw the post and actually went to her house and said, you better see this.
Wow.
So she rang, and when I explained it all to her and told her what I knew, then she knew that it was real. And the story is that what had happened was our biological parents had her young and put her up for adoption. But it wasn't vetoed.
Yep.
Then they had me and obviously decided that they didn't want to have 2 adopted babies out there in the world that no one knew about, so they vetoed mine, which you can do. Then then the mother or the woman remarried, and she had 2 more kids.
Yeah.
So no one knew about me. No one in their whole family. So I was a huge shock to everyone.
Yeah.
So my full sister Michelle, we've got a great relationship. She came down to Melbourne and visited us, and we keep in contact.
Yep.
My half sister, I have a relationship with, like she talks to me. but we don't like regularly communicate. But my half brother, he wants nothing to do with it.
Yeah, right.
It really freaked him out.
Yeah.
Because
is that like a PTSD type of thing?
Well, maybe the issue is that my birth name is very similar to his name.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like she had another one and she named him the same as she named me.
Yeah.
So that sort of freaked him out, I think. And he having one adopted older sister was enough for him, I think. So, yeah, I've had no communication with him at all.
Yeah.
And that's his right. That's fine. You know, if he doesn't want to talk to me, he doesn't have to. Lots of people don't want to fucking talk to me. So, you know, it's nothing new.
Yeah. So before your Fireworks King business, which is what was promoted on the podcast, where did you start? What was your first job as like a teenager or a kid out of school?
Well, my first job was Bowser boy.
Yep.
And then I got expelled from. Or I went to a Catholic school and I got expelled from there in first form. And then what had happened was I broke a big sheet of glass that was in the science lab. Being a kid, you know, you do silly things like you'd pick it up and you'd drop it and it made this really great noise when it hit the bench and all the air getting out from under it.
Yeah.
And one time I picked it up, it must have been a bit crooked and it came down and it smashed.
Yeah.
Moving forward, I missed the lunch bell one day and going up to get my lunch, I had to be there at a certain time. It was a Catholic school with brutal fucking nuns.
Yeah.
You know, all the stuff about the priests, you know, fucking kids and all the shit that's gone on with that.
Yeah.
There should also be some liability on the way the nuns treated kids too, you know, because they were brutal. Anyway, a lay teacher spotted me going to get my lunch. And I was a bit of an asshole even then at 11 or 12. And she said, "Where are you going?" I said, "To get my lunch." And she said, "You're late." And she grabbed me by the arm and I just pulled out of her arm and said, "I'm getting my lunch." And she had an engagement ring on and she slapped me across the face and cut my face.
No way.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
So I just fucking stormed out and went down to see my dad. And my dad was a really understated guy. He was a great...
You looked up to him, didn't you?
Oh, very much. He was a big man and a very well-respected man in the community. Raised millions of dollars for the local community. He was a member of the Lions Club. And he also was a top first-grade rugby league player.
Yeah, right. Who did he play for?
He played for Yass, but he also was offered trials and just play with St. George and Parramatta.
Yep.
But in those days, the money wasn't any different. Country rugby league was huge.
Yeah.
Country rugby league was my whole childhood.
Yep.
So mum not driving, we'd have to go early to the games because dad would drive and we'd have to be there really early because you would have to queue up for a mile to get into the football grounds, whether it be Goulburn or Yass or wherever.
Yeah.
So Dad got offered this to go to St. George was the one that really wanted him because another Yass player had gone there, a guy called Donnie Burge, who had a lot of success there and actually came back to captain coach Yass.
Yeah, right.
So Dad had just started his own hairdressing shop and barber shop, and he sort of weighed it all up and decided that he'd rather play for Yass and stay with his family and not do the Sydney thing. Because, see, you've got to think in the late 50s and early 60s, rugby league in Sydney was on the radio. So the only place that you listened to it was on the wireless. It wasn't like as big and mainstream as it is now.
Yeah.
Obviously, those players were still looked up to in a big way, but the money the guys in the country were getting then, like if you were in the grand final and you won, you got the gate.
Yeah.
The team.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was a big deal.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was a real matter-of-fact guy, and he only spoke when he had something to say, and he always handled things perfectly. So he said to me, I went down and told him what had happened, and he said, listen, go to Davey Lawrence's, the local hardware store, buy that sheet of glass you broke the other week, and return it to the school. Don't say anything about what this cunt's done to you, this fucking woman. Just go back and take the glass back. So I went, all right. So I went to David Lawrence's, and I got the sheet of glass cut, and it was $12. So this is 19...
That's expensive for them back then, isn't it?
Yeah, this is 1973 maybe?
Yep.
So $12 it cost me. So I took it to the school, and I walked into the head nun. Her name was Sister Joan, and she was a fucking cunt of a thing, a brutal fucking bitch, you know?
Yeah.
They loved caning us kids. They loved hurting you. You know, they would blister your fingers one day, and then they would bust them the next day.
Yeah.
You know? So I walked into her office with this sheet of glass, all, you know, probably 40, 50 kilos of me, and I went to give it to her, and I said, here's your sheet of glass, Sister Joan, and I just picked it up and just fucking smashed it on a fucking table, on a desk. So that was my last day at the school.
Yeah.
So then I went to the Yass High School and I ended up being expelled from there as well.
Yeah. Do you remember what you were expelled for from there?
I was just a lot of things. I wasn't much for this whole learning thing.
Yeah.
I didn't like school.
Yeah.
I went for two reasons. I went to metalwork and to perv.
Yeah.
That's why I went to school.
Yeah.
I had one exercise book.
Yep. Just one.
For 3 years of high school.
Yep. And then you just write shit in there, and that's it.
That was had every subject, everything was in one exercise book.
Yep.
I just didn't give a fuck about it.
Yeah.
So my dad, it's funny how history repeats itself. When my dad left school, his father took him down the street in Yass to the local hairdresser, local barber, a guy called Gordon Bush, and said, you've got an apprenticeship with Gordon Bush, you start here on Monday. Right. So Dad had no choice, you know, what his job was going to be. He wanted to be a carpenter or a builder.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a mechanic, but every prick in my class was becoming a mechanic. So he took me down to Alan Fisher, which Alan Fisher was a local who had an engineering business. And this guy was hugely respected and brought so much to the community. He's someone that, you know, if you knew him, he's a little guy but tough as fucking nails. So went down there and took me to see Alan Fisher and got me a job as an apprentice welder.
Yeah.
And I started there the following Wednesday. I just turned 15. And what happened at school was I got called into the office of my metalwork teacher, and he just said to me, you've really got two choices. Either find a job or, you know, you're going to be expelled from here as well, and it's just not going to look good. So I told Dad, and Dad went and organised it. So I got an apprenticeship as a welder, and so for the first part of my young adult life, I worked as a welder. I worked there for my apprenticeship. Then I went to Canberra to another welding place. I worked on the construction of the.
You loved Canberra growing up as a kid, though, didn't you? That was like
I was
you liked the Chinese shop, the Chinese restaurant.
It was the first restaurant I ever went to as a child. It's called Happy's, and it was opened in 1962. And I was born in 62, and that was like Mum and Dad's big night out was to go to Happy's Chinese. And it's still there and still owned by the same family. Yeah.
Was that technically like one of the first fast food restaurants in...
It was the first Chinese restaurant in Canberra.
Yeah, okay.
And so I worked in Canberra, worked on the Telstra Tower, which was a big job. Worked on... And then I ended up having my own business and working on the construction of the new Parliament House.
Yeah, right.
And I did every single handrail in that building, a huge building.
The brand new one, like the latest Parliament House. Wow.
I did all the external handrails and all the internal handrails. Every single handrail through the staircases, outstairs, everyone is mine.
Do they have secret rooms and stuff in Parliament?
It's really funny that they're talking about politicians fucking their secretaries and fucking their assistants and all this shit. There's a room about this big, right in the centre of it, underneath the flagpole.
Wow.
And it was called the meditation room, right? But someone even put it, this is when we were walking there, someone wrote on the door with a texter, assistant fucking room or something like that.
Really?
And that's what
Holy
it was for.
Shit.
It was for these guys, these pollies, to go fuck their assistants in.
Holy shit.
Yeah, but it was called the meditation room.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, holy
And
shit.
that room's still there now. That room,
Yeah.
and that's what it is. It's called the medicine. It's only a really little box like this.
Yeah, it's just a small little box.
Little hideaway, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You said on Facebook the other day, obviously TVs are a mainstream thing these days. Everyone's got them, every man and their dog. But back then, you were talking about TV licenses.
Yeah, you used to, in Australia and lots of countries throughout the world, when TVs first started, you had to have a TV license.
Yep.
And the TV inspector would come around, or the communications inspector, I think he was called, would come around doing laps of the streets to see if you could see flickering in windows or aerials or whatever.
Yep.
And I remember my mum and dad, when we lived in Yass, having a huge argument one night because mum spotted the TV inspector and dad hadn't bought a license.
Yeah.
So I don't think he came, and I don't think we got caught. But yeah, there was big fines, probably $30 or something in those days.
Yeah.
But yeah, we in Australia had to have TV licenses.
How'd you start the Fireworks King?
Okay, so we'll
go back and forth here, but we'll start with the
we moved to Bowning. Me and my first wife bought a house in Bowning, and I was working at Parliament House, and then we moved to Melbourne with the racing. I actually moved down there for the NASCAR thing, and then when we moved back to Canberra, I was pretty busted ass. We'd had to sell our house. We didn't have any money, and I had a mate who was a few years older than me who was a bit of a character, a bit of a rogue. He was an ex-Vietnam vet, and he introduced me to an old guy who was a scumbag, fucking scumbag, who had a little toy shop in Fishwick, and he sold crackers, and he was called the Cracker Man. So
obviously it was crackers, wasn't he?
And anyway, I was working for a friend, Jeff, as a concreter, and I was earning $500 a week cash. He was paying me cash. That was it. And I bought a carton of fireworks called Goon Lee, and they were big crackers. And I thought, I'll see if I can sell a few to some of my mates. And if I make any money and I got some left, I'll have them. I sold the whole carton before the end of the weekend, and I'd made $2,500.
Holy smokes!
So I just reinvested that $2,500 in buying more, and then more
off this guy.
Yeah. Okay. Initially, yeah. And I'd take him down to Calder, and then I took a truck to Calder.
Full of fireworks.
And sold $40,000 or $50,000 worth over the weekend. So then what happened, me and my mate Ray, we looked into the rules and regulations, and everyone thought fireworks were banned, and they still do now, but they're not actually. The fireworks aren't banned. You just have to jump through the hoops and get the right licenses. You can still get fireworks if you want to. So we've discovered that you could still sell fireworks. So we decided we would go to China, buy fireworks for the Queen's birthday weekend in Canberra, set up all these shops.
Did you go to China actually? Or did
I've been 12 times.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. How was it going the first time?
The first time was the big one, because what happened was we needed to spend, I think it was $150,000 in fireworks we needed to buy fireworks. We didn't have it. So this guy, Victor, who was a little Chinese guy who in Fishwick, hooked us up with the Chinese mafia. These really, really bad cunts. Really bad cunts. And I went over to meet them, and the deal was that they would guarantee the payment of our fireworks for $40,000. So we could go to the fireworks company in China, order all the fireworks we need for the Queen's birthday weekend, $150,000, and they would guarantee it for a further $40,000. And if we didn't pay, obviously they were going to come after us. So my life was so fucked up at that stage that I had nothing to lose. So we took the deal, imported the fireworks back to Australia, had our Queen's birthday weekend, and it was fucking massive. Absolutely fucking massive. Sold everything. Sold like millions of dollars worth of fucking fireworks. I turned $500 into $2 million in 1 year.
Holy shit!
And anyway,
Did you know what to do with the money, or you just were crazy with it?
Oh, just drugs, hookers, and fucking fast cars. You know, it's just out of control.
Yeah.
So went back to China to take the money, and I had to smuggle $200,000 into China.
Yep.
In a briefcase. So 4 of us went. Myself, my mate Ray, this fucking dirtbag that had the cracker man, and hang around he had this tall fucking red-headed fucking wanker. So over we go, and Ray said, let's split the money up between us, you know. And I said, that's fucking stupid. Why all of us get busted? Just you give it to me, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So on the plane, had $200,000 in the briefcase, 150 for the fireworks, 40 for the bad guys, and 10 spending money for me. So getting on the plane, leaving Australia, that wasn't any problem at all. We were worried about. So what we decided to do was fly into Guangzhou rather than flying to a major centre like Hong Kong or anywhere with this money. So flew into Guangzhou, and when we got there, I've got my briefcase, and we're walking out of the airport, and this young soldier spots me. Eyeballs me, and he's a little tiny guy, and he's got a fucking machine gun.
Yeah.
He starts making a beeline straight towards me.
Yeah.
So I just made a beeline straight towards him, just fucking glaring at the little cunt, you know?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he just must have decided, fuck this, and he just walked the other way. So we got the money in.
Yeah.
So I hired the top floor of a big catamaran to take us from Guangzhou up the river to China.
Yeah.
Now, this was really fucking great because it was the day that China was being handed back over, Hong Kong was being handed back to China.
Yeah, okay.
So
it's
we
a
were
distraction,
there.
was it?
Hey?
Was it a distraction for you to do your stuff, or was it?
No, it was just great.
Yeah.
We didn't plan it like that, but it was great to be there on such a monumental day in history, you know.
Yeah,
it was fireworks and celebrations, and it was just really cool. So we got the top floor of this catamaran, and the 4 of us just partied our asses off in the top floor, drinking champagne and taking this money. And we get there and we go to...
Did you have hookers and stuff there when you...
No.
That was just... This is just a business deal.
This was So we go to... this other guy did, this big tall redhead cunt. They had this thing in the hotel that we stayed in, which was an American hotel, called Missy Massage. So he went upstairs for massage, he got your cock pulled. So he was right into that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we go back to meet these guys at this really high-end restaurant in Hong Kong. Go up there. The fireworks company people were there who were actually government guys, pretending to be private enterprise, but they weren't. They were government guys who had this fireworks business. We handed over the 150 to them, gave the bad guys the 40, and partied with these guys all night. It was fucking great. You know? We had a huge night with these guys, and you know, there's no way I would ever go back and do it again.
Yeah.
Because the risk is far too great. But yeah, it was great. So then we went back to Guangzhou, set up more fireworks deals, and did all that sort of stuff.
With the same Chinese mafia guys?
No.
Okay.
The Chinese mafia, we didn't need them anymore.
Yeah,
we had our float now. We had everything we needed.
Yep.
So yeah, the fireworks king just took off, you know, ended up being huge. I had shops all over Australia, distribution network, all legal, but we're also selling, you know, bungers and
so back then, because I was before the fireworks era, I was born in '88, but you had like shops kind of like franchised out, really, did you? The fireworks throughout Sydney and Melbourne,
Sydney,
Adelaide.
Well, not. I think we had one in Adelaide. We had a big presence in Darwin.
Yep.
We had one in Newcastle. But we had basically had people doing distribution for us in every state. I think we had 5 or 6 shops, actual shop fronts. But yeah, it was ended up being the police, the government in Canberra had me in court 76 fucking times trying to close us down.
Your business?
Yeah, 70, and they lost every fucking time.
Why was that? What was the reason that they lost?
Because we brought to the public what they'd been tricking everyone was illegal, and there was no legislation to make fireworks illegal. All they did in the 70s was they changed the rules.
Yeah.
So when they changed the rules, all the toy shops and everyone's just stopped selling it because they didn't want to do the paperwork and stuff.
Yep.
So they raided my shop. They raided my shop in Fishwick and with a truck and police and fucking all this stuff.
The federal police, or was it just
and took everything out of my shop. So went to court and I won the court case and they had to give it all back. Now the Dangerous Goods Department of the ACT government obviously didn't want the publicity of not only losing the case but giving the fireworks back, so they wanted to know could we do it in a secure location, right? They didn't want to come to my shop. So I had a mate, Chills, who had an engineering shop in Fishwick. So I said, there's a little alleyway in this where this engineering shop is.
Yep.
Let's do it down there. So I rang up the Canberra television station, the news, and told them what was going on, and they come and set up cameras and film the government giving all my fireworks back.
That's great.
Which they fucking hated.
Holy shit.
So we got it all back, and then they would just bust us again for different things, and went on and on and on.
Yeah.
And eventually they won. Eventually they got me, many years later, and really fucked me up big time. And then they changed the legislation again, but the legislation, it's still legal. You just have to do the things that you want to do. But I had enough.
Did you ever do fireworks for like the Sydney Harbour Bridge or anything like that?
No.
Just like
they're big.
stuff?
They're big fireworks display companies that do. We did fireworks displays for smaller organisations. Like city councils on New Year's Eve and those sort of things, and weddings and parties and stuff like that. We did all that, but not the really big stuff. That's for the big guys who just do displays. Yeah, I was more wholesale and retail.
Yeah. How'd you get involved in music? Because you're now like a music promoter, and this is what we'll get into the Speedway stuff later. But how'd you get involved in music, and what was your love for it? Like,
when I was younger, I loved music. I loved Australian music from when I was about 11. I bought an album when I was 11 years old called Towards the Blues by the band Chain. And I didn't know what it was. I just bought it for the cover because we didn't have a proper record shop. We had an electrical store in Yass, and they just had records. And you just go through them, and I bought this one because it was a really cool cover and got home, and it just changed my fucking life.
Yep.
So I ended up really getting into that, and then some of my friends had bands, and I used to go and get up and have a sing with them, and until they were playing at a bar in Canberra under the MLC Tower one night, and there was a bunch of girls having a party, and I was singing Wild Thing. Yep. And I decided to sing Wild Thing, You Make My Cock Swing, and pulled my cock out and started waving it around on stage. And
that's actually on your cover of your book, isn't it, behind us?
Oh, yeah, that's not me doing it. That's just me on the Cruci-fix. But yeah, so I did that. Boys got the shits because we got kicked out of the venue. Then a week later, I did it again. So I got banned from being on stage. Yeah. Couldn't sing for shit anyway, but... So then I just started booking bands. And then I ended up with friendships with, like the boys from that band Chain and lots of other, high-end guys. And then when me and Michelle got married in 2001 maybe? Yeah. 2001. I booked three really famous Australian guys to come and play at our wedding. Which was Phil Manning, the guitarist from Chain, and arguably Australia's greatest guitar player, Kevin Borridge from the La-Di-Dahs and the Kevin Borridge Express, and Phil Emmanuel, all played at our engagement party. And then we had them back for the wedding. And then I sort of got more serious about booking. But I met Stevie Wright from the Easy Beats. Yep. What had happened was I was in Melbourne years ago, and I was staying at the old Melbourne Hilton. And I came down in the morning for breakfast. And when I went into the restaurant area for breakfast, it was packed. There was people everywhere. I looked around and I spotted Stevie Wright, like the actual fucking Stevie Wright, sitting at a table by himself having breakfast. And he spotted me, realising that I'm looking for a table, and he just beckoned me over. He said, "Come and sit with me." And I'm like, fuck.
And that you're starstruck.
Oh, fuck yeah. I was blown away. It's fucking Stevie Wright. So I went over and I sat down and I had breakfast with Stevie Wright, and we just hit it off and became instant friends. Swapped contact details and stuff, and then we just started doing things together. I started booking a few gigs for him. When my son James started playing guitar, he started playing for Stevie. And
I was gonna get into that. Talk about James.
Yeah, so Stevie, became really good friend.
Yeah.
And I really get annoyed because people post things about Stevie on Facebook and they don't know the truth about Stevie. They think about his heroin problems and they say it ruined his career and all this sort of stuff, but they don't know the truth. Stevie's big problem wasn't that ended his career wasn't his drugs. He broke his foot falling out of a window because he left the keys to his flat inside and he climbed up a drain pipe and fell and broke his foot and got a compound fracture. And when he went to hospital to have it operated on, he got golden staph and he ended up with a black foot and he couldn't walk. So that was what ruined his career.
Yeah.
And so I just get so sick of people being negative about him because he was one of the greatest. Some of his music will live on forever. He knocked the fucking Beatles off the charts. So that was sort of it, and I just started doing the music things. I booked a huge concert for Stevie's last ever major concert appearance, which was like the who's who of the Australian rock and roll industry, and the backing band were the best players in Australia. And then just went from there, and then got more serious about it. I actually got really serious only a few years ago about booking festivals. When I got diagnosed with sarcoidosis in 2017, I couldn't work anymore, couldn't drive tow trucks anymore. So then I thought, well, what I've been fucking around with for the last 30 years doing the music thing, I need to start doing seriously to make a living out of it. So then I started booking festivals all over Australia for producers and promoters and people who own venues.
How do you monitor your disease? Like, is there a way? Because remember, we had to stop and go with this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I had a really bad flare up and had some issues a month or so ago, and I've still got some ongoing issues now. But yeah, it's just one of those things that the doctors don't really know enough about. A lot of it's just guesswork, and the medication I'm on is really shit because I'm on incredibly high doses of a medication that's used for people with transplants.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So it's a anti-rejection medication is the medication I'm on, and my doctor who's looking after me is one of the leading immunologists in Australia. His name is Professor Matthew Cook. He's actually at the ANU in Canberra, so he looks after me. So I've got really good care. But yeah, it's a pretty shit fucking disease. People that have it, it's a fucking nightmare.
Can you explain a bit about it?
Well, it just attacks all of your healthy organs. When I got sick, I got really sick.
Yep.
I'd had a few things happen to me over a couple of years when I had a few bouts of not being well, and I'd had a few CTs and things, and they'd found, I had lymph nodes here, but I always would say nothing remarkable. And then in September 2017, me and Michelle and the younger kids went to Melbourne to see our older kids. And while we're down there, I got really fucking sick. Got really, really fucking sick.
Yeah, I couldn't move.
Couldn't fucking function at all. Wow. And so we came home.
Does it cause arthritis?
Well, it's an autoimmune disease, so it can. I don't have any arthritis.
I know a bit about autoimmune because my girlfriend has endometriosis and autoimmune.
Right.
So she has two things. That's why I was asking about it. And it sounds quite, not the same as endometriosis, but
I've got a son who suffers from arthritis really bad.
Yeah.
And my wife does too, actually, because she has Crohn's.
Yeah, okay.
So we came back and started having tests, and they decided I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer. And I had a really young female GP, and she said, I don't think you have cancer. I think you have sarcoidosis, this really rare autoimmune disease. I said, oh, okay. So I went, basically I spent 7 months laying on the couch at home or in hospital or in an ambulance, shaking and crying and wanting to die. I was in such a bad state.
Wow.
Because they weren't treating me. So I said to the cancer doctor, I said, my GP thinks I might have this thing called sarcoidosis. And she just scoffed and laughed it off and said, you have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So then they sent me to see a gut doctor who also specialised in sarcoidosis as a part of when he was doing gut stuff. I told him what my GP said, and he said, I think you have sarcoidosis as well. So then finally we started doing that, and you have to tick a certain amount of boxes with a disease like that before they can start treatment for it, because the treatment's so severe. And went to the doctor one day, and I was in a really bad way. If I didn't have two little girls at home still at that stage, I would have blown my fucking head off.
Wow.
I just didn't want to be alive anymore. The pain was so bad. So I went to my doctor this day, and Michelle came with me because she had to drive me here. I couldn't drive. And I just wanted help. I just needed something to help how sick I was. And I said to her, if you don't give me some help today, some form of medication to ease the pain and suffering I'm going through, I'm going to go out, leave the doctor's surgery. I'm going to buy the biggest bag of fucking cocaine I can. I'm just going to fucking self-medicate because I know that's going to make me feel better. And she laughed, and Michelle looked at her and said, he's not fucking joking.
Yeah.
So she rang this Professor Cook at the Sarcoidosis clinic and told him my situation, and he then prescribed me with a Category 1 drug that she couldn't to help with my situation. But I still wasn't diagnosed. And so then the next thing was they did a PET scan, and my body just lit up like a fucking Christmas tree. Like it was
Holy
fucking everywhere.
shit.
And then they went into my heart and took a piece of meat off the side of my heart, because that's where they could see some of the infection. And that came back with granuloma, which is a sarcoidosis. So I'm like thinking, fucking great, finally I've got, a proper diagnosis. And they said, no, first, before we can count that as a diagnosis, we have to discount TB, because that can also be TB. And I said, well, how long does that take? And they said, it takes 3 to 4 weeks for us to grow the culture. And I'm like, for fuck's sake. Everyone they all knew I had sarcoidosis, but they couldn't fucking sign off on it.
Yeah.
Then they sent me to see a ophthalmologist to see if it was in my eyes, and it was in my eyes. And as soon as it was in my eyes, then they had enough evidence to say you've got sarcoidosis. And they started me on a bunch of different drugs, and had me on what's that fucking stuff called?
Like painkillers or
no, it's health guys take it.
Steroids, yeah.
They put me on fucking steroids, and the steroids were fucked. It was knocking me around really bad. And in 2 weeks, I'd gone from never having a problem with my sugar levels to being in the diabetic range.
Well, after steroids?
Yeah, after the steroids.
Wow. So it impacted your body that much. It just flipped it on its head.
So I just stopped taking them. And I said to my doctor, I'm not going to take them. I said, I don't need to be a fucking diabetic as well as fucking everything else that I've got going on. And in the end, I go to the sarcoidosis clinic in Canberra, and then they put me on this medication, and I take 3,000 milligrams every day. But the problem with that medication is that it can increase the risk of many cancers.
Yep.
So I'm being monitored for that as well all the time now. So, but anyway, I describe it this way, that I've got 65% of my life back, 95% of the time, or 90% of the time.
Yeah.
And the other 10% of the time is when I sort of have a flare up or whatever,
like a relapse kind of thing.
But I still don't have, my full life back. I'm only 65% as good as I was before.
How did you get involved in bikies? Did that come through just on the other side of I read in your book?
I've always had bikes. Always been involved in bikes and always liked to ride. And I'm not just I've got a bike in the shed guy. You know, there's plenty of bikes that have got a Harley in the shed. They're just fucking cock pullers. So they want to say, I've got a fucking Harley Davidson. Same as lots of guys who racing cars. Bob Jane used to call them garage cock pullers.
Yeah.
You know, they just buy it so they can fucking say to their mate, I've got a racing car, you know.
Yeah.
And it's the same with bikes, you know. You got guys with Harleys who ride them down to the fucking cafe. Yeah. You know, or, you know,
so there's pretend bikies and
they put 3,000 Ks on their bike every fucking 2 years.
Yeah.
So I've always been a serious biker, and I ride all the time, ride big distances. There was a period in my life when all I had was a bike. But I met John Stepanek through NASCAR and got involved with those guys. You know, just as a trusted friend of those guys, and been riding with those guys ever since. That was in 1991, and so they're just a really good bunch of guys. And it's great to be able to go away and ride with them and spend time with like-minded guys who you can trust, guys who have got your back, guys who understand what being staunch is. You know, there's so many people now that say, "Oh, mate, I got you," but they don't. Yeah. They'll just like to fucking say it.
Yeah.
And that's 90% or 99% of civilians.
Yeah.
You know, they think they know, but they don't. You know, the guys like this, I can fucking call and they will be there.
Yeah.
If I was in a fucking bind, they would sell their fucking house to get you out.
Yeah, right.
You know, they would do anything they can. If you need them or need something, that they're there for you. They're real. They're what mates are meant to be. You know, but 90% of your mates don't get that. They say they do, and they love fucking spruiking about it and saying, you know, I'm there if you need me. I'm fucking do this and I'll do that. I got you but they haven't.
Yeah.
It's just all fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
But you know, those guys do it, and I still do it. I love to ride with those guys. I ride with them, you know, every chance I get.
Yeah. You're originally going to ride down here.
We were going on a ride that week.
Yeah.
And as it happened, they ended up cancelling too because of the floods.
Yeah.
So
it just wasn't meant to happen back then.
The ride didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
So I had to cancel because I got really, really fucking sick. And then the rain all came. So so that it'll be on at a later date. And but yeah, mate, those guys are the best friends that people could ever have.
Yeah.
Because they do. They're staunch. They fucking completely fucking trustworthy. They love their fucking wives. They respect their fucking wives and family more than anyone else.
Yeah.
You know, these guys aren't fucking wankers who run around screwing around behind their wives' back. They don't do that shit. You know, they fucking do. These guys do the right thing by everyone, but society frowns upon them because they don't understand. You know, they're big guys with tattoos and fucking Harley Davidsons, and they're just bad guys.
Yeah.
But they're fucking not. They're men.
Yeah.
They're what men are meant to be.
Yeah. How'd you get your start in racing? Obviously, the podcast is about car racing.
Yeah.
But how'd you get your start in? How'd you get it started?
Right. Well, when I was a big fan of Dirt Speedway. You know, I would go to Tralee every chance I get, or Liverpool, but mostly Tralee.
Yep.
And guys like Rodney Combs from America, Rocket Rodney Combs, and the no hanky-panky Valvoline Yankees, you know, they would all come over and race the Australian team. And I loved it. They were my absolute fucking heroes. I just adored these guys. I looked up to them and loved watching them race. And Barry Graham, who I consider to be the greatest sedan driver Australia's ever produced.
Yep.
He drive any fucking thing. And David House was the local guy. He won 2 Australian titles. He was a Canberra guy. He was my local hero.
What year was this? 82? Was this when you got started?
Well, I started 83. March 83 was my first race.
Yeah.
So what happened was I was a bit of a lout, or not a bit of a lout, I was a full-blown fucking lout and had fast cars and on the road. But I had no ambition to race. I hadn't even thought about racing. I was just enjoyed being a hood. And my mates they all thought I could really drive. So they would say, let's go with Southy so we'd go out dirt roads and get sideways and drive fast. And they always wanted me to go and do stupid things, like I would get in my Falcon, 351 Falcon, and come up behind semi-trailers and push my bumper up against the back of their trailer. Yeah. Doing 100 kilometres an hour and spin the fucking back wheels with guys in the car, and so we do all these stupid things. And the coppers chased me. I had a big car chase to Canberra, where the police chased me all the way to Canberra and got arrested and thrown in jail and all sorts of stuff like that had happened. And one day, my mate, who's my best mate I've ever had. Local guy Peter, he also left school early to become a mechanic. Peter Masters, yeah. Yep. He was building a stock car to race in the local stock car ACT New South Wales board. Yep. And one day he just said to me, "Do you want to drive my car?" At the meetings in another class. He was going to race it in 1500s and he wanted me to race it in Series 3 production. And I said, yeah, all right. But I didn't really understand why he wanted me to drive his racing car. It made no sense to me. Like, he was building this car and putting all this money and effort into building this really good car. Yeah. And he's asking me to drive it.
Yeah. At that time, you were just into bikes and stuff, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, I had motorbikes and just fast street cars.
Yeah.
But anyway, no one's ever confirmed this to me, but I really have a strong feeling that one of the local coppers, a guy called John Campbell, who was the guy who chased me to Canberra, as a part of the YAS Higher Patrol guys training, my car chase was a part of their training.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd you not find that out?
Oh, the coppers told me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this John Campbell who chased me, who I ended up being really good friends with. Yeah. I think he said to Peter, "You need to help your mate out. Yep. You need to do something and get him off the fucking road before he fucks up." So I think that's what happened. Peter he's still 40 years later, he won't fucking confirm that's what happened. But I think that's what happened, because I can't think of any other reason why he wanted me to drive his car.
Yep.
So this was a really important part of my life, like a really important part of my life. I had just broken up with my girlfriend, who I'd been with for quite some time, since I was 17. Now I was 20. And then I turned 21 in February. But on New Year's Eve, I met another girl and ended up falling madly in love with her and leaving my girlfriend. So I had a new girlfriend. I was going to start racing cars, and it was just really good time. So we went. My first race was at Fairburn Raceway in Canberra Speedway. Myself, Peter Masters, his wife Tracy. Yeah. Who's got a love-hate relationship with me. She loves me, but she fucking hates my behaviour, and is the only one who always pulls me in a fucking line.
Yeah, but that's why you're called the wild thing, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So, and their daughter Danielle.
Yep.
Who's the most beautiful child I've ever met in my whole life. She's a grown woman now, but as a child, most of your friends' kids are just fucking snotty-nosed pieces of shit, you know?
Yeah.
She was just adorable her whole life.
Yep.
My mate Robbie, his girlfriend at the time, Bronwyn, and my new girlfriend. So we all went to my first race.
Yep.
It was a 12-car field, and I had to start at the back because I was a rookie. It was my first race.
Yep.
So I'm driving a Datsun 1200 that's got a modified 1500 engine in it, twin Webers, a lot of work done to it. So it went fairly well, and I won the first heat, passed everybody, and they're all driving Tiranas. 6-cylinder Tiranas with triple Webers or triple SUs and all that sort of stuff. All pretty hotted up cars.
Yeah.
Passed them all, round the outside, won the first race.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of, wow. That's fucking great. And everyone's like, Peter's like, fuck, that's fucking great. Went out again, second heat, won the second heat off the back again, passed everyone. Third heat, passed everyone, won again.
Yeah.
And won it easy, just fucking kicked their asses.
Yeah.
For the feature, there's a guy who's a local racer, been around for years, still around now. His name's Terry Robbie.
Yep.
He changed cars for the feature. He went and borrowed a super sedan off another guy for the feature.
Did anyone know about this in the pits though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'd come second to me in every race.
Yep.
And
was it the same number on the car though? Like that?
No, he just changed cars.
Changed cars. Yeah. Okay.
So he goes out. He'd been starting on the front row of every race, and he did in this race too. And I passed everyone except him for the feature. But being my first race in Speedway, I didn't know the rules. I just assumed that by winning 3 fucking heats and coming second in the last race, I was a winner.
Yeah.
I'd won the fucking day.
Yeah.
So we go up to collect our trophies and they give the third place trophy to fucking whoever that was, and then they go second place Tony Southwell. I'm like, what the fuck? Second place? How the fuck am I second?
Yeah.
So I go up and get it, and then they give the fucking first place to Terry because he'd won the feature race.
Yeah.
So
you thought it was for outright, but you were just doing the heats and you'd think you'd won the whole thing because you won the heats.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'd won 3 out of 4 races.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anyway, so I learned then that but anyway, Terry won. If you had changed cars, you wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was my first race, and I actually collapsed standing there waiting for my trophy. I was so overwhelmed by the whole day, and I had this beautiful new girl in my life. I was the happiest I'd been for years, and I just won.
Do you remember your girlfriend's name at the time?
Oh yeah, I do, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it was fantastic, and then the next race meeting, we went to a place called Woodstock, another speedway out in New South Wales near Canberra, and I won there again. I won the feature there, won the day.
Back then, was there lots of like big crowds back then?
Oh yes, like dirt track racing in the bush in the 80s was great.
Yeah,
like, it was fucking great. There was like tracks everywhere, and there was lots of cars and people involved, and people were engineering incredibly good fast cars. And then we came to Yass Speedway for the first time, and Terry Robbie was there, and the guy that had beaten me.
Yeah.
Anyway, I
with 1 car or 2 cars this time.
he was in his fast car.
Yeah.
And I was coming underneath him. At the Yass, where the pit straight is, there's like a wooden wall, or there was. And he had, in those days, you could run like tyres that wide outside your guards. So I purposely 8 tyres held on much better than 4. So I just leaned on his car, and I pushed him over onto the wall, and his tyre went up the wall and tipped him fucking over. And I won the race. Now Warwick Stansfield, rest in peace, he only just died recently, was one of the most respected people in the Yass community, and certainly a huge guy in local racing.
Yeah.
He was the clerk of the course. So he called me over and he said, I'm going to park here for the rest of the day.
To you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, I know you did that on purpose.
Yeah.
And then he said, but he had it coming.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of success driving Peter's car. And then I decided to buy my first car, and I bought a car that had just won the 1500 series championship.
Yep.
But I couldn't afford to buy it with the engine that it had won with, so I bought it with just a modified engine, but not the really good one.
Yeah.
It was a stupid move because the car just wasn't any good, and I had no success in it at all.
Do you remember the car, like what car it was and what it looked like?
It was a boxy, square Fiat 124, I think.
Yep.
And
did you run number 17 back then, or just
no? That's actually a story with the 17.
Yep.
But I think I only ever won one race in that car, and I sold it to a friend, and then I built a car, an open car. And in those days, you could build open cars, and basically that's what it was. You could do whatever you fucking wanted. Yep. This was a 180B Triple S with a TRX 2-litre supercharged fuel injected.
Yep.
And it was a V8 killer. And it took me race meeting after race meeting after race meeting, it would just fuck up. It would throw belts off. It would just the injection wouldn't work. I think I built a dozen different injection manifolds on different angles to try and get it to work. And then when it did work, I just fucking killed it.
Yeah. Did you have much crew back then around you or not?
No,
really?
It was just whoever most of us would just go to the races with by yourself sometimes, or with your girlfriend, or with a mate, or but people there would help you anyway. Everyone helped each other out. Yeah. That's the really good thing about dirt racing is it's such a huge family. And so that happened, and I raced that car, and the next thing was I really felt I had a good ass in the car. I really felt that I had skills to develop. And I wanted to race speedway at the top end of town. I wanted to race against David House and John Pine and Barry Graham and all those guys.
This is before NASCAR had come in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And that's what I wanted to do. I really wanted to race a super sedan against those guys. My chance came at JAS in the board championships, ACT New South Wales board championships, and David House would come over to race at JAS, and all the women hated it because their husbands would never win when Housey was there. So they would just whinge about him being a trophy hunter. But the best thing about Housey coming over and racing with us is it made us all step up our game. Yeah. Because no one would drive as hard as they did if he wasn't there. You know, trophy presentation would come and fucking all those guys, women would fucking boo Housey. Yeah. This guy was 2 times Australian champion. We should have been, or I was, grateful to fucking have him there. Anyway, so board championship, it's me on the inside pole, David House on the outside. Yep. For the board championship in the open class. Yep. This was my fucking chance to race my fucking hero. Yep. And I was so fucking excited. I didn't give a fuck about anything else that was going on in the world except that moment. I'm sitting there in my car and filled the engine with methanol. I didn't turn it off. I was sitting on the dummy grid waiting to go out and filled the motor with methanol. So I ended up getting pushed off the grid and it didn't happen. So, so I then decided I want to buy a super sedan, buy a really good super sedan. So I looked around, and one of the Australian champions had a car for sale, and it was probably the best car in Australia at that time. It was a lot of fucking money, and I was doing really well. I was doing the Parliament House thing, and my missus, we had a home business, and everything was going well, and I was going to buy this car. And then Bob started building the Thunderdome, and I went straight down and have a look at it. Now, I didn't actually envisage going to race NASCAR. Yeah. I was certainly interested in it and thought it'd be great to do it. Yeah. But it wasn't.
Were they televising NASCAR in Australia back then or not?
Not as much as there is now. Like Daytona 500 was really, during the 80s, was the only race we got live. Yeah. But so Bob's got this thing. So I went down and looked at the track, and then I was going down to all the meetings. Every meeting I'd go. This guy, Pat Wormsley, my dad used to say his nickname was Wold. My dad used to say the world was full of Pat Wormsleys. It'd be a much better place to live in. This he's a fucking really good guy and a real legend. He brought in a cutout from the Sydney Telegraph, and it was driver search, NASCAR driver search, the George Elliott, Barry Graham, NASCAR. Yeah, yep. And he said, I thought you might like this. And I looked and I thought, oh, yeah. So the next race at Calder, I went down, and George was there, and they were putting on like a information day, you know. So I went, and it was $250 deposit. I didn't have any money, so I said to my cousin Mark, who was at the racetrack with me, my cousin's husband, Mark. I said, listen, mate, can you lend me the $250? I want to do this. He said, yeah, no worries. So he lent me $250. So it was so him and his wife, Donna, my cousin, were actually the first people who invested in my NASCAR career.
Yep.
So they gave me the money and I signed up. I came down to do the NASCAR on my birthday in 1990.
Yeah.
February 1990.
Your life was a bit of a mess back then. Was it around then? Or
it was. And it was getting worse because my wife had decided she needed a boyfriend.
Yep.
And so things were really getting fucked up. And so I went down and because what had happened was the other girl I was seeing, everybody was against it because I'd been with my other girlfriend so long. They wanted me to be with her. It's time to get married because everyone was getting married in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And this other chick was a couple of years younger than me. She was too young and blah, blah, blah. So we ended up breaking up because everyone wanted us to.
Yeah, okay.
And I ended up going back to my wife, who became my wife. So anyway, I go down to do the NASCAR thing, and Peter Masters, who's really sensible guy. He's someone who's got his head together. He's a very good businessman. Even a better human. I took him with me so I wouldn't fuck up. Right? So we go down the night before and we stay at the Keilor Motel right opposite the Keilor pub, and we go over there for dinner. Now Peter says, we won't go into the bar, we'll just go into the restaurant, we'll have a steak and a beer, go back to the hotel. I said, no worries. So we go to do that. And then he says to me, let's just go to the bar and have one beer. That's right. That ended up being a fucking out of control, loose fucking night.
One beer was never one beer.
It ended up being 1,000 fucking beers and fucking drunk as 10 men.
Yeah.
And it's a whole fucking story about that night. I made a lifelong friend and a lifelong sponsor that night, met that night. And my cousin was working there behind the bar, who was pretending that he was a Canadian fucking Mountie. He was out here. And I saw him, I go, hey Mick, and he pretends he doesn't know me. This is my first cousin. Yeah. And he's got this Canadian accent. And I go, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, who are you? And in the end, I outed him because he turned up in Keilor pretending he was a Canadian Mountie out here on holidays and got a job and was just fucking all the barmaids and having the time of his fucking life. Wow. And me just turning up at this random pub completely fucking outed him. So that was his last night that he didn't go back. Yeah. So that's in my book there's a big story about that night. Anyway, so what happens is we go back to the hotel fucked. And all the other guys had arrived in the bus. Georgie brought a whole busload down from Sydney. They were all in their rooms. In the morning, I wake up and I'm fucking rooted. We all meet. And the funny thing was that one of the guys in my group was the guy who had married my old girlfriend. He was a copper from Yass. Yeah, right. And they had it was either their send-off or their engagement party at the pub that I drank at. Yeah. Which is really fucking weird because they both knew I drank there. Yeah. He fucking hated me because, I'd obviously chopped up his cook before he had, and guys don't fucking like that shit, little dick fucking syndrome. And she knew I fucking drank there. Yeah. So I'm like, why the fuck are you here? Anyway, so she came in to see me in the bar and we had a bit of a moment and he was looking through the back of the bar and saw me and then I walk out there and he's like, a bit of a ruckus started and wanted to have a go at me. And then everyone pulled me away from him. And he's like, points at me like this and he goes, he thinks he's fucking Mad Max. And he goes, I'll see you on the fucking road. I'll see you on the road, Like, righto. So then we get down there and he's in this fucking group. He's one of the guys that's doing NASCAR. Yeah. Because he's a highway patrol copper and obviously thought he was a bit of a gun. Yeah. Well, to actually be a NASCAR, like he's actually he was doing NASCAR. Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. And as it turned out, which was really fucking funny, I love everyone knowing it, I came 27th or 29th. Yep. Not sure, but it was the top 25 who got through to the final. Yep. He came 476.
Yeah.
Right, which is fucking great. I thought that was really good. So I didn't get into the NASCAR final, and Adam Pay ended up winning it. Was Adam Pay win that year, or was it Steve Cosson? Anyway, one of those guys won it.
Yep.
I think it was Adam Pay. So, but what happened was, a few months later, I get a phone call, and my ex-missus sings out. She's like, Bob Jane's on the phone. And I'm, what? She said, Bob Jane was on the telephone. And I'm like, get fucked. Why the fuck would Bob Jane call me? You know, I don't know Bob Jane. I obviously know who he is, but I don't know Bob Jane.
Yep.
And she's like, really Bob Jane. So I pick up the phone, and I got to hear for the first time something that I heard 1,000 fucking times after that. Hello, Bob Jane here. That's how he answered the phone always. And he invited me down to look at a NASCAR. He wanted me to drive a car. He had a car for me. I didn't find out till many years later that what had happened was Barry Graham, who was a big part of the NASCAR deal, him and George Elliott owned it, had actually fought for me to be in the top 25. He told me himself that he fought for me.
Are you still mates with George Elliott?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
He's a great bloke.
Oh, fuck yeah. He's fucking character.
So back to Bob Jane.
So Barry had fought for me to get me into the final 25. And he'd also, Bob had obviously asked, were there any guys that were, candidates to come and race, and Barry had, written me up to Bob. So Bob said, come down, I've got a car for you. So I drove straight to Melbourne the next day and got down there, and he had a Michael Waltrip Country Time number 30 Pontiac.
Yep.
Complete car, ready to drive on the track. And he wanted $76,000 for it.
Yep.
And he said, I want you to buy this car, I want you to race in the next race, which was the Christmas Cup, and it was $1 million event.
They don't have races like this these days.
No.
Anything. Yeah.
And, well, our prize money then still hasn't been matched 30 years later, while we were getting paid.
Yeah.
And he said, I want you to buy this car. You can just pay it off through prize money. Take you a season or two to pay it off. And you can just, it's yours. Go race. And it sounded really fucking tempting, but I didn't want it. I just bought a house for $90,000, and this guy's selling me a racing car for almost that, $76,000, and offering me to go on the tick for it. So I was a bit like shell shocked at what to do, and so I can't remember whether it was there on the day or a phone call later. I said to him that I didn't want to take his offer, and I explained to him the reasons why, and he said, "Listen. The Christmas Cup race in December is $1 million race. You'll get $17,500 to come last." He said, all you have to do, don't put any tyres on it. Don't practice the fucking thing.
Yeah.
Don't do anything except put some fuel in it. Go out on the racetrack. Start the race at the back of the field. Do one lap. Pull up.
Yep.
He said, just do a start and park. He said, you'll pick up $17,500 straight off the fucking bill. Now you only owe me $60,000.
Yeah.
But still, I decided it wasn't what I wanted to do. I do regret that. It's I admit that I have regrets, and that's one because that probably would have been the best choice for me to make as far as getting a car. So when I found out more about what Bob was doing and how much we were getting paid, I put the super sedan idea on hold. Super sedan racing or late model racing or Grand National racing, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to race on dirt more than anything. Even
though the NASCAR was in your face, you just still want to do dirt.
Dirt was my love.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to do anything else. I wanted to race dirt. But finding money to race dirt at that level is impossible.
Yep.
To get sponsors, you have to fund it all yourself. Where the NASCAR thing was television.
It was on Channel 9, wasn't it?
We were on all of them. We're on 9, 10, 7, and SBS. We had to go on every one of them at different times. So with the money that was being offered, plus we had television, sponsorship was going to be easier. So I decided I'm going to go and do that for a little while because it'll pay for itself. I don't have to worry so much about money.
Yeah.
So I went to America.
Yep.
A guy called Doug Taylor, who I got introduced to me through George Elliott.
Yep.
Built cars. He had a business in Denver, North Carolina, not Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
So we went over to crew for him at Daytona for a guy in the Bush Series race called Richard Lasseter. This was a young guy who'd invented some board game and made a fucking fortune
off it.
Decided to go bush racing, NASCAR racing.
Yeah.
So he had 4 or 5 cars, and we went to Daytona to crew for him. And so when we got to Daytona, we'd booked tickets to go from Daytona to Denver. Now, Denver to me was fucking Colorado.
Yeah.
The other side of America.
Yeah. Well, most
like
people
from fucking Daytona here to fucking Colorado up there.
Yeah, yeah.
Where really I was only going here. So we'd already booked tickets.
Yeah.
And no one said anything to me. We just thought naturally we're going there. So we go there, and we crewed for Richard at that race. And I had a fucking run-in with fucking Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah.
Now, obviously Dale Earnhardt's a legend and a hero and all these fucking things, and people have so many different opinions. Like, there's guys
you get bombarded on the internet all the time.
Oh, they fucking love him. They fucking like you took away all the races where he fucking punted some cunt off the fucking track to win.
Yeah,
he wouldn't have won fucking half as many races as he fucking did.
Yeah,
like he was just fucking pushed every cunt out of the road. Like Dale Earnhardt would not survive racing dirt speedway in Australia. Yeah. He would get the fucking shit punched out of him so many fucking times that he would soon learn the lesson. Yeah. You can't just fucking but in America, this is a fact, and it's really quite funny. They talk about the guys fighting in NASCAR, after races, Kyle Busch or fucking Joey Logano or whoever's having fucking all these guys, Kevin Harvick,
Brad Keselowski, all those guys.
All those guys.
Yeah.
Not one of them's ever thrown a punch. Yeah. It's always fucking a slap or a fucking hair pull. Yeah. The only guy that's actually punched anybody was fucking Marcus Ambrose. Yeah. Who fucking punched Casey Mears. Yeah. Like he's an Aussie. That's the only actual punch that's ever been thrown. Yeah. Is fucking Marcus Ambrose, who punched him and fucking gave him a fucking welter. Yeah. So Dale Earnhardt, the way he drove in America, he wouldn't have fucking done it here. He wouldn't have lasted. He would have been fucking flogged. So, and all these guys carry on. But anyway, so I'm working on Richard Lasseter's car for Doug Taylor. Yep. And in those days, they didn't have garages for the bush cars at Daytona. We just had lean-tos, all carports. And we're next to Dale Earnhardt, which I thought was pretty cool, Dale Earnhardt. Yeah. And he was working on his own car and all that sort of stuff.
Old school racing back then.
Yeah. Yeah. This is 1991. Yeah. Daytona 91. Yeah.
Was this when he was his yellow and blue car?
No, it was a black.
The black one.
Black one, yeah. Yep. And like his bush car was the same as his cup car. Yeah. But his bush car was owned by him, not by Richard. Yeah. It was owned by, if you have a look on the entry list for the 1991 Bush race, it was actually owned by Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. And Dale Earnhardt Incorporated wasn't actually incorporated until like 90-something. Yeah. So like later, 5 or 6 years later. But that's who it's listed as, who owned it. Yep. Anyway, he's changing the sway bar on the Bush car, and he saw me and he sung out to me and he said, "Mate, can you?" Well, he wouldn't have said mate, whatever he would have said. Pal. Pal, yeah. Can you, could you pass me, have you got a rubber hammer or a mallet you could pass me to knock out the sway bar? I went, no worries. So I went over to the toolbox, grabbed him a rubber mallet, handed to him, and he knocked the sway bar out, passed it back to me. No worries. The next day, or Because in those days, even in Australia when we were racing, you used to get to the track on Monday.
Yeah.
We were there for the whole fucking week.
Yeah.
So next day or whatever, I'm doing something and I asked him to pass me something, only something small.
Yeah.
And he said to me, if you haven't got your fucking own gear, you shouldn't fucking be here.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I thought, you fucking piece of shit, you know? And that happened to me.
Yeah.
Exactly the fucking same thing happened to me 4 or 5 years later at Calder when a circuit racing guy who'd also been racing Oscar came to NASCAR. And he came to his first race, and it wasn't Bradley. He came to his first race in NASCAR and I was this side in the garage and there was a wall and he was in the next set of double garages. And they'd forgotten the power connection for the 240 volt power connection for his scales. So he came in and asked me, could he borrow my scales? And of course, I said, yeah, no worries. Here's my scales. So he used my scales, weighed his fucking car, did it all. Going back, no worries, thanks, that's all good. Next fucking race meeting, someone ran over my wheelbase gauge and bent it. Yeah. So I asked him if I could borrow his wheelbase gauge. Yeah. He said the fucking same thing to me that Earnhardt said to me.
Yeah, in America
in 1990. If you haven't got your own fucking gear, mate, you shouldn't fucking be here.
Didn't you get arrested in America?
Yeah,
before we go back to Australia, but we didn't finish the American story off.
I was in a car park where me and my mate were in a Pontiac Grand Prix hire car. And it wasn't. It was an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, and they're front wheel drive.
Yep.
It's V6 front wheel drive. So I've got the handbrake on, and I'm driving around the car park with the back wheels dragging and doing fucking donuts in the car park of this huge shopping centre.
Yeah.
A police car fucking spotted me and came over and pulled me up, and I get out of the car and he's like, pull the fucking gun on me. Yeah. Get back in the car. And then my mate gets out of the car and he's like, fucking got the gun on him. Get back in the car. You know, fuck me, this is serious, you know? Yeah. So he comes up and he gets me out of the car and we walk around to the back of the car and he says, you know, he starts questioning me and can't understand a fucking word I'm saying. Yeah. Because they can't understand a word I fucking say over there.
Yeah, they can't understand the Aussie accent, really.
Mine.
Your Aussie accent, yeah.
Like, my friends don't seem to have a problem. Michelle just converts straight to Southern as soon as she gets there. They all fucking... But no cunt can understand me. So he says to me, after finding out who I am and all this sort of stuff, he says, what are you doing in America? Yeah. And I couldn't say I'm here buying a NASCAR because I only had a holiday visa. So I said, holidays. Yeah. He instantly fucking grabs me, spins me around, and goes, haul and ice. Haul and ice. Yeah. He thought I said.
Oh, haul.
Why would I fucking say that if that's what I'm fucking doing?
Yeah.
Handcuffs me and sits me on the fucking ground with the handcuffs beside my car, and then gets my mate out, handcuffs him, puts him on the fucking ground too. Yeah. Calls other fucking coppers to come. They fucking pull the car apart.
And you're trying to explain yourself on the ground.
I'm like, in the end, I'm like, vacation.
Yeah. Like, yelling out, like, make them understand.
So after like an hour and a half of all this shit, finally get the message across that we're just fucking holidaying. So yeah, it was quite funny, but yeah, he thought I said haul and ice. And ice was only a new thing, you know, it was only a really new thing. But yeah. So getting misunderstood was really funny. Yeah. And so we're back in Daytona, and we're at the pub, and I had a George Elliott,
like a shirt on,
Real McCoy, bourbon jacket on. Yeah. And this American guy comes over to me, a Southern guy who was obviously down there with NASCAR as well, says, "Do you know George?" And I said, "Yeah. He's a friend of mine." He said, "Yeah, he's a friend of mine too, know George," and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And this other guy comes over and he introduces me to him, and he says, "This is Tony." What do they call me? They couldn't understand Tony. Tiny. Tiny Shaftwell.
Right? That was your name in the States.
Tiny Shaftwell. They all called me Tiny Shaftwell.
Yep.
And he says, it's Tiny Shaftwell from Australia. And this guy goes, wow, you speak such good English.
Yeah.
I go, what am I fucking meant to speak coming from Australia? You know, in those early days of us all going over there, the South, like the East Coast of America, knew very little about Australians because all Australians went to the West Coast. When Australians went to America, they went to LA or San Francisco. No one went over there. So they only knew about POMs and stuff that would all come to the.
Were they considering you a Pommy, like because of your accent? Did they think that you were?
I don't know. I don't know what they thought I was.
Yeah.
You know, in those days, it was really different. But they're really good people down there.
Yeah. Do you enjoy American barbecue, by the way? I love that stuff.
Oh, I do too. Yeah. It's also fucking sweet. All that rubs and shit they put in.
Yeah.
But one of the things that was a real eye-opener to me was I was brought up in a family where race or colour was never a thing. Like my dad would never describe somebody by their race or their colour. Like he treated everyone as a stick man. You know, everyone was the same.
Yep.
And
how it should be.
And I grew up with not even thinking about race or colour.
Yeah.
It wasn't even something that I thought about. We went to this pool hall in Daytona, which is, you know, south. It's really, it's not as civilised as people would like you to think it is still. And racism over there is still a fucking huge fucking problem. You've only got to have a look at all the people who just want to fucking rubbish Bubba Wallace for everything he fucking does.
Yeah. He's been driving really great, by the way.
Yeah, I know. He's doing a good job. He is, and he needs to be fucking. People need to just concentrate on his driving.
Yeah.
So, me and my mate go to this pool hall, and there's people everywhere, and there's people watching and people playing, and we're playing pool. And my mate pulls some Sheila on and goes off, and we had the table, so I needed a partner. So there's a young guy there, and I said, mate, come over and you can partner me for the next game. And he's like, looks at me because he's a dark boy. He's a dark skinned American.
Yeah.
I don't like the African American thing because they're fucking not African Americans. They don't come from Africa.
Yeah.
They're fucking born there. They're Americans.
Yeah.
So he comes over, he's like, I can't play. And I said, yes, you fucking can. And all these fucking rednecks, they've fucking got steam coming out from under their collars, right?
Yeah.
But I've asked this guy to play pool with me, so then I get my fucking back up. And he's fucking playing pool with me. Yeah. I don't give a fuck what anyone says now.
Yeah.
I've got the table. I won the fucking table. And he's my fucking partner.
Yeah.
So luckily for me, we lost that game. Because it probably would have ended up being a whole thing.
In a bar fight, pretty much.
After the game, he comes over and he says to me, and he's like really grateful and says, thank you so much for that. He says, I've been coming here for 3 or 4 years. And he said, I've never got to play. It's fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
To be shut out like that.
Yeah. Just
because you look different to someone else. And it fucking really makes my blood boil that that's still a thing over there, you know? And they do it, they're still segregating people with their attempt to look like they're not. Because by saying the first black driver to win a race, that's fucking segregating. Why isn't he just a driver?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why isn't Bubba Wallace just... Was he his first fucking race?
Yeah, same like female or male race.
He fucking first won a fucking race.
Yeah.
Why does it have to? And they have Black American Month where they celebrate the achievements of people like Bubba.
Yeah.
That's fucking segregating.
Yeah.
What don't they get about that? Why don't they fucking just treat them exactly the same as everyone else? We're all in this fucking melting pot together.
Yeah.
And just say, don't even
Yeah.
It's not a fucking thing.
Yeah.
His colour or his fucking race or who he fucks or who he doesn't fuck. None of that is a thing.
Yeah.
He's a human. We're all fucking humans.
Yeah.
And just fucking treat each other like that.
Mm.
And that pisses me off. It fucking pisses me off that these fucking rednecks, and it's fucking rife still over there. You know, that whole fucking stupid rebel flag that they wanted to fly in America.
That would have been big when you went over there.
Well, it's got such racist connotations to it that I'm glad Bubba stood up and said that shouldn't be here. And I'm glad NASCAR had the balls to fucking do something about it. Because it shouldn't fucking be there, because it has got racist connotations in America. You know, so that's good. Like, NASCAR's in really good hands in America now, because young Ben Kennedy is basically running the show. And he's a young guy. I'm not even sure if he's 30 yet, probably.
He's an ex-truck racer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's family. He's Brian France's grandson.
Yeah, okay.
His mother is France.
Yeah, okay.
So he raced for a few years in the trucks, basically to have that background, to know what it's like to be a racer, and then pulled out to go into the office, and now he's going to be he's one of the bosses, and he's going to be the face of NASCAR moving forward, and all this stuff that's happening, having fucking rappers who I'm not into it, but having that music, you know, rap music at the Coliseum event, and having the Coliseum event, and having the new car, and all these things are all Ben Kennedy. You know, he's a big part of what's happening to NASCAR, and it's good to see that a lot of these guys who are so against the car, the new car, now that they're seeing it race, are starting to come round. They still want to have a go about the one wheel nut thing, you know, and every time something happens.
Those new cars are great, though.
They are, but they're still a stock car. This is what they don't understand. They're still a fabricate, you know, like the way the chassis and the frame and everything's built, they're still a stock car. There's only a couple of things I don't like about the new car. The floor-mounted pedals, I don't like, and the rear diffuser. They're the two things that I don't personally like, but the rest of it I think is fucking great. I mean, Cup hasn't had a new car since 1981. We've been driving fucking that 1981 car.
Yeah, for years.
Fucking nearly, it's over 40 fucking years.
Yeah.
Driving the same fucking car.
Yeah.
I mean, we've made changes to it. You know, we've had different...
The COT, the gens, the different
but
gens.
It's still the same car.
Yeah.
Still exactly the same car. We've been same fucking chassis, same fucking rear end, same gearbox. Everything's the fucking same. So it was time for a new car. And they've done a great job of it.
Yeah. So we'll go back to your Thunderdome days.
Yeah.
You were talking, you know, we were talking off air many times before how you actually got screwed over big time by a bloke to buy one of your car. Was it your first NASCAR, was it? Or, you know, you got sold a dodgy package?
Oh, no. I didn't get sold a dodgy package. I actually really appreciate that deal because I looked at a few cars. I went to America, and the car I was going to buy there off Doug Taylor when we went back to after the race meeting at Daytona was a current model Thunderbird.
Yep.
And it was $50,000 US. And by the time I got it back to Australia, it was going to cost me just under $100,000.
Okay.
Because Bob hadn't got the import tax dropped at that stage. So with transporting it and everything. So
yeah.
That sort of was blowing the budget. So I had a look at a few cars. Robin Best had an old car for sale, but it was an old Banjo car, and Banjo chassis didn't have very good longevity. They tended to get a lot of flex in them, and they would crack in places and stuff. So I didn't really like it. It was a beautiful looking car.
Yeah.
But I didn't really like that.
Was there different chassis back then with the NASCARs, was there?
Oh, yeah.
But different body shells, obviously. Was there different? So there was a banjo chassis. What was the other ones?
Hutchison Pagan was the big one, and Laughlin. Laughlin was like what everyone had later.
Yep.
So it was Hutchison Pagan was what my first car was, and banjos. So there's banjos, Hutchison Pagan, and then there was a couple of others. But banjo and Hutchison Pagan were the main ones. Hutchison Pagan were the biggest, most people. All the cars Bob bought out from the States to have built here were Hutchison Pagan. He bought a shit ton of brand new Hutchison Pagan skin chassis. Yeah. And then John Shepherd and his team built the cars, which was Pat Purcell and Keith Leggett and Tommy Smith. All those guys built all these cars for the Australian market. And one of those cars was what I ended up with. Now, Barry Blake bought that car in the really early days of the Thunderdome. And just hang on, I'll drink.
Yep.
And raced it for a year or two. And he had it for sale. And I'd been crewing for Barry. And I was trying to fucking remember how it happened, how I ended up crewing for Barry, because he had an accident and the car ended up coming back to Canberra. There was some guy in Canberra, and I ended up somehow getting the job of taking it to the Gold Coast for him for the Gold Coast race, first IndyCar Grand Prix. So the car was in Canberra and I trailered it up there. Me and another mate of mine took it up there for him. I don't know how it happened, but I had a lot of trust in a couple of guys he'd never fucking even met, at that stage. So I took it up, ended up crewing for Barry and helping him. And so then we got to talking about his old car. And he offered to do me a deal where I could pay it off over the season out of prize money. And I'm really fucking grateful because it actually took me 3 seasons to pay it off. But Barry and Cindy, his wife, worked with me and allowed me to do that. But the car wasn't what I bought it as a roller, and basically it just was meant to just need an engine and gearbox. Yeah. But it needed so much more than that. The screen that was in it was a glass screen, and they'd gone to Lexan, so I had to put all new Lexan throughout the car. It didn't have a diff center. It didn't have a fuel cell. It didn't have any fucking thing.
Yeah.
So it needed a lot of work. So we took it back to Yass, to my mate Peter Master's workshop, and went to town building a race car. And this is when a lot of the disappointment starts for me with local support. Because guys who I'd raced with and guys who were local in the racing community would be interested in a real fucking NASCAR being in town. You see a fucking NASCAR, you'd go and look at it.
Yeah.
But because it was fucking mine, I'm one of them, they hate to see anyone achieving beyond what they. So one of them in particular was a guy who I knew really well. I used to support his business, and I saw him driving up the street, and he saw the car parked in front of my mate Peter's workshop. Yep. And he turned away so he didn't look at it. Didn't want to appear interested. And that's still the case. Like, these guys still don't want to appear interested in anyone having success beyond what we did in local speedway. And it's sad that they can't embrace other people. Like, I'm the only other guy. There's only 2 of us who've had success on a national scale out of Yass that raced locally. An old guy called Ron Marshall, who raced with Bob Jane. Yep. And myself, we went on, and both of us had national success. So they should be embraced, but not ignored. And they do. They'd rather ignore it than pat you on the back. Yeah. But yeah, so we went to building that car. I bought an engine off Bob. It was a Junior Johnson 23-degree engine that everyone was racing at that time. And I bought a gearbox off Bob. I sent the engine to a guy called Dave Handley in Sydney, who's an engine builder who built Fred Series engines. And he also built race engines for big boats, like twin turbo, fuel injected, those huge fucking big block motors. So he built my engine. Bob Jane put my engine on the tick for me. I could just pay him off. And so we went to doing all that. And in the end, when we arrived at the racetrack for our first race meeting, my car had cost me the 96 grand I would have spent buying the car off Doug Taylor, and $20,000 more than I would have if I had bought the car off Bob. So, not knowing what I needed to know at the time, but arriving at Calder and driving I got loaned a truck to take it down on. And driving down to, I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't thought because I'd driven a few other people's cars, not in races, but I'd driven other NASCARs on the track. Getting there and driving down with my own car and all my gear and everything, and then all of a sudden I'm on the Calder Highway and I'm driving towards, and all of a sudden the Thunderdome come into view, and I looked in the mirror and saw my own NASCAR stock car and I'm like, fuck,
this is real.
We're doing this. This is fucking real, you know?
Yeah.
And it was so exciting. But we got to the track. We had 3 wheels, 3 wheels that we could race on.
Yeah.
We bought a set of jack stands from Kmart. Peter Masters had put a toolbox together for me.
Yep.
Warren Edgerton, a mate of mine who I work with in Canberra, made me my fuel cans.
Yep.
And everyone else just lent me stuff. The Laws brothers put a headrest on my seat because my seat didn't have a headrest. And everyone down there just, Rob and Bess gave me tyres. Everyone just did whatever they had to get the car ready.
Yep.
Went out for practice. I don't think we got to practice till Wednesday, maybe, Tuesday or Wednesday. Car was fucking terrible. I was doing 32-second laps.
Yeah.
And the lap record at that stage was 28.6.
Yeah.
And it was just awful. And Fred Seary just turned up out of the blue and started shouting abuse at my guys. And Peter Masters come over and he said, I'm going to tell this old cunt to fuck off. I said, no, don't do fuck off. I said, just bite your fucking tongue and do whatever he fucking says.
Yeah.
So Fred just yelled abuse at my guys for an hour to change this and change that and change whatever. And next practice session went out and we weren't in the 29s, but we were like just the really low 30s. So we're getting respectable then.
Yeah.
So then Fred, rest in peace, Fred is such a character. He gave me my driving advice. He's telling me how to do a lap. And the first bit was really good. He said, go out there and run around doing 2,000 revs.
Yep.
Do 10 laps. Then do 10 at 3,000, then 10 at 4,000, and just bring your revs up. And he said it's really tedious and it'll really fucking annoy you, but you'll get to know the track.
Yeah.
So I did what he said, and then he said, now we're up to speed. This is how you drive a fast lap. He said, when you're going down the back straight, when you come into turn 3 to go and that before you go around to turn 4, he said there's a big bump you'll hit, and he said you still got your foot in the gas. He said if you have to, put your left foot on top of your right foot to hold your foot down fucking hard.
Yeah.
He said when you fucking hit that bump, the car's going to come off the fucking ground. He said then you button off, and then when it hits the ground, he said you back into it and you fucking dirt track it right around that fucking corner.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck? Anyway,
was the reason it was going slow is because it's wheel spinning as it hits the ground? Is that what he's trying to say?
I don't know what he's trying to tell me, but anyway, we didn't do that. So we went out and we qualified. Towards the back, maybe 4th from the back. It was a pretty good field for our first race, and it was actually the biggest crowd NASCAR in Australia ever had. We had 56,000 people for the race, and over 30 on Saturday just for qualifying and practice.
Yep.
So it was fucking huge. And qualifying, I drew pill number 1. So I was the first guy on the track for qualifying.
Yeah.
And seeing 30,000 people in the crowd for qualifying and you've got to go out there first, it's like, how could this fucking happen? How could I draw? So I was actually on pole for a moment.
Yeah.
And so we went out, I did the qualifying, then the race started. And when the race started, I passed 3 or 4 cars in the first couple of laps. We're going really well. Rodney Combs lapped me. And then a little while later, Peter Masters got on the radio and he said, Rodney's coming. And I went, I know he's fucking coming. Because he lapped me again.
Yeah.
But we did really, really fucking well. We ended up finished the race in 7th position. And
were they 500 miles back then in Oz NASCAR or 200?
250 laps that race was.
Okay, yep.
So the race is a mile. The track's a mile long. So we did finish the race, and there was a big crash just right towards the end. Took out Charlie and Max and Kim and a few others. So I finished 7th. Caller Park's timing had me at 7th. Tracy, Peter's wife, she was our official timer. She had me at 7th.
Yep.
We were fucking wrapped. Top 10, first fucking race. Then when the official results come out, somehow I was back to 12th. I don't know how, and I don't know what. And even then, Peter said, you've got to, complain or whatever. I said, no, I don't want to. I'm so fucking excited. We had such a fucking great day. I don't give a fuck about. I don't want to spoil it by starting an issue about where we finished. So we just took the 12th and that was it. So officially it was 12th, but we did actually finish 7th. But it was an incredible way to start. See, in those days, we all had the same equipment. Everyone in the Chevs had 23-degree heads. We all ran the same, some of the cars were front steer cars, and that stage mine was a rear steer, but there were still rear steer cars driving.
Were you all running on Goodyears or Hoosiers back then?
No,
or was it both?
Goodyear, but they were bias-ply tyres.
Yeah, okay.
So they grew. So we'd all get our tyres and pump them up and lay them in the sun, and then measure them and try and then put the biggest one where we wanted the biggest one on the car. And it wasn't until 2 years later that we went to radials, which really made things a lot easier because radials don't grow. You can't stretch them. So we all what you had when you first measured that tyre, when you blew it up, that's what it was. It wasn't going to change.
Yep.
So that was a big change. That was a big change in NASCAR in Australia when we went to radials.
Yep.
They gave us a choice at the first race meeting. We didn't have to change the radials if we didn't want it. We could still run the bias-ply tyres. But everyone was a second faster straight away. And George Elliott turned up. The first car to do a 27-second lap was Doug Taylor, the guy I went to the States to see. Doug Taylor was driving for Ian Thomas, and he had a Pontiac Grand Prix that he built for Ian, and he went out and he did a 27-second lap. It was the first one that was ever done. And then George went out and did a 27, and Rob went out and did a 27.
Yep.
And George had this fucking nose on the front of his car. It looked like the trains in America with the big nose that chucks all.
Yeah. And I remember those NASCARs.
So anyway, they made him cut it off and fix it. But, it was pretty funny. It was very inventive, but he was never going to get away with it. Yeah. But that was George. But George's cars were.
He went on Kerry Ann Kennedy's show.
Oh yeah, he drove on there, and he's a really good promotion whore. He's very good at promotion, very good at. But it's not just for him. Like he's promoting for everybody. He was guys like George were really important. Yep. People like himself, George, Robin Best, Ian Thomas, those guys who brought money into the sport. Money and cars. Those guys were really important to the sport, and they deserve a lot of credit for helping it, because it was the demise of those guys that ultimately led to the sport ending. Yeah. Because the sport had changed a lot. After 95, when we lost the NASCAR sanctioning, things started to change. We had a lot more circuit races coming in, and it's not their fault, but they bring a different attitude to racing than what dirt track races have. Yeah. What we needed to make NASCAR continue to grow was Brooke Tatnell and
the big sprint car guys,
young guys, and some of the older guys too. We needed those dirt guys, more of them to come into the sport. We already had Barry Graham, we had Max Stumsey,
John Sidney. That team back then, that was essentially the 888 of NASCAR, wasn't it, in Australia? They were dominating.
What does that mean?
They were the 888 Red Bull Racing in supercars. They dominate in supercars.
Right. but it was Max was obviously very good, but John bringing Barry in was the catalyst.
Yeah,
because Barry knew everything about those cars, and was an incredible driver as well. So him coming into that team was what made the whole Max and Barry thing, and John's know-how too. John's know-how on how to build a car and build an engine, and his professionalism. Also, it all came together. It was lightning in a bottle, getting those three people together.
Yeah,
that really worked. Max was really funny. In the early days, he had a red Pontiac Grand Prix, sponsored by Pizza Hut.
Yeah, okay.
And we started at the same time. So he was in a garage above me, and he came into my garage, and he said, "You got a minute?" I said, "Yeah." So he comes, we go in, and he goes, "What do you do with your leg?" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "What do you do with your leg?" I said, What leg? What are you talking about? He says, "Come here." So we go into it, and he gets in his car, and he's like, "My leg keeps hitting the steering column, like when I go into the corner.
Yeah, okay.
The G-force, I keep smashing my leg into the steering column." I said, "I don't fucking know, Max, because I'm only new here too, but it doesn't happen to me." Anyway, later that day or the next day, he says, "Come here." So I go into Max's shed, and John's built him an aluminium bracket that wraps around the steering column with another aluminium cup with all foam padding for Max's leg to sit in. And he had that the whole time he raced.
Yeah,
he's the only person that ever had it. But it was what do you do with your leg? I thought it was really funny.
Yeah. Before we'll end part one with because we've got a 2-part series going on here. We'll end with like Bob Jane. How influential was he on your racing career? Just the whole NASCAR thing.
He was the best because my first race ended with Bob used to come around the garage and go and visit everybody after the race. And he would, just ask you. Anyway, after my first race, he walked into my garage, him and Laree, his wife at the time, and he grabbed me and he started shaking me. Yeah. And he's like, "What do you fucking reckon now?" Because he was built like a fucking brick shit house, solid as a fucking rock. Yeah. And I just immediately grabbed him by the fucking ears and pulled him in and gave him the biggest fucking most passionate kiss on the lips you've ever seen a man giving on a man. And his wife, Laree's, her eyes are popping out of her head, and Bob just looked at me. Yeah. But it was just such a fucking great moment. And Bob, he loaned me money to start. And I remember he is such an imposing man. Like, he fills the fucking room. If he's in a room, he fills the fucking room. And I remember always being so fucking intimidated by him. If I had to go and have a meeting with him, I had to go and see him, I'd always be really intimidated by him. So one day I needed to get past it, get past feeling intimidated by him because I really liked him. So he used to go upstairs and he had a girl sitting outside his office on a desk, and you would see her and you would sit there on a chair, and then she would send you in to see, and Bob was sitting behind his massive fucking big desk, with all the Bob Jane stuff, all his memorabilia and trophies, and in his office, and his office was huge.
So was it in the centre of Melbourne?
This is at Calder.
Oh, it's at Calder. Okay.
Yeah, upstairs in Calder at Calder Park.
Yep.
So I go this day. I'll go. I'm gonna ambush the old cunt. I'm gonna go up there and wait for him.
Yeah.
So I snuck into his office before she got there, and I sat at his desk.
Yeah.
Now I always tell people that I had my feet on his desk when he came in. Now I don't know if I did or not. I probably didn't, but it's a better story to say that I did.
Yeah.
And Bob walked in and saw me sitting at his desk.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me and he smiled. He said, "Get the fuck out from behind my desk." So from that moment on, we were mates. We got on like a house on fire. And I think that he just got respect for me that day because I did that. But I remember we went to race at Indy this second time. And actually, this is a good story. I'll tell you in this to finish this off. We got there, and there's a guy in Melbourne who's a really hugely successful businessman who owns a massive transport business. And he gave me a job part-time working at his transport place. And I was running shuttles around Melbourne for him.
Yep.
And he part owned, or I think it was the majority owner of one NASCAR team.
Yep.
So he said to me, "Are you racing at Indy?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, listen, if you want to load up our car, you can put your car in the truck too, and if you go with the driver, we'll take your car up for you." This is fucking great, because normally when we did this sort of thing, what we would do, we would pallet up all of our equipment and send it by transport and then tow the car up. So this way everything was going to go, and I was going to also get a lift by going in the truck. So we go up there, and the truck driver was loose and I was loose, so we get there and we end up going out on the town and getting fucked up, and he threw a glass across the table and it bounced and hit a girl on the head.
Yeah, wow.
Didn't hurt her.
Yeah.
But still, it was a really fucking stupid thing to do. But we were on the gear full tilt. We hadn't slept. We've been, using nose candy all the way up, fucking in the truck, and we were partying.
How many days were you awake on?
Well, from when we left to come up and drove from Melbourne, and we didn't sleep at all. And then we went out that night.
Yeah.
And the next, so we get. I said to the bouncer, I said, "Listen, mate, I'll take him out." We get to the front door, and the bouncer just fucking, who was a huge fucking New Zealand guy, just punches him, just fucking king hits him in the back of the fucking head. He deserved it, but it just wasn't the right thing to do. So I lined this enormous fucking guy up, and I hit him on the point of the nose with every I know it fucking hurt him, because I hit this big cunt as fucking hard as I could. That's the last thing I remember. Because obviously I got fucking flogging. But I'm in the back of some sort of van, and I'm bouncing around in a fucking van, and I'm like, well, this isn't a fucking ambulance. And I'm in the paddy wagon. Yeah. So the coppers have fucking arrested me. Yeah. I've got tooth through my fucking lip, covered in fucking blood.
Holy shit.
I've had the shit beaten out of me.
Yeah.
They take me to the Southport lockup and put me in the fucking lockup. And there's a cunt in the lockup with me in the morning, and I've got a driver's meeting at 9 o'clock. And I've got to be at the fucking driver's meeting for the first practice session of the NASCAR. Yep. So
we don't want to get too far into this part, because we want to tell them part two.
Yeah, I know, but I just want to tell this story.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get out, but this cunt wouldn't shut up. He's fucking yelling at the coppers. So I shut him up. Yeah. Next minute, the coppers come and they get me and they go, "You're out." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Bob's there. Bob's fucking bailing me out of fucking jail.
Yeah, right. Bob Jane bailed you out of jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So he's there and I'm like, "Oh, fuck." So I go out and we get in his car and I get in the passenger side and I just go to open my fucking mouth and Bob goes, "Don't say a fucking word." We go back down to the racetrack. Yeah. And I want to go home. I want to go to my motel because I'm fucking
covered in blood and all sorts of shit.
And I said, "Bob," he goes, "You're fucking coming now." So we go in and I walk in with Bob past every fucking Oscar and NASCAR driver and crew chief. Yep. And Bob's got me and he goes, "Sit fucking right there." Yep. And sits me at the front on a chair right in front of this fucking stage.
Like a principal type of thing.
I've never felt so much in view in my whole fucking life. And it was really fucking funny.
Did you consider him? We'll wind up part one here, but did you consider him as like a father figure to you, or what was
just a fucking mentor and someone who I admired and hugely respected? Yep. He was just a great guy, and I've got lots of fucking stories we can talk about in part two about Bob, but he was just a really good guy. And even in his fucking 70s, he would take out the back of the shed and fucking flog you.
Yeah.
You know, he's not someone you would ever say to, you know, you want to have a go? Because he would have a fucking go.
Yeah.
You know, he is a wonderful fucking guy. We were friends right up until he died. He really, really good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, we'll be back for part 2 with more of like a lot of your life here on the podcast. And I hope you guys are enjoying the conversation.
No worries. Thanks, mate.